Whitaker Chambers was one of the great Christian political thinkers and writers of the 20th century. His masterpiece is a book called Witness. And Acton has a really impressive library in this building, and I discovered today they have a first edition copy of Whitaker Chambers Witness. I might accidentally walk off with this instead of the copy that I brought today, so please forgive me in advance if I do that. This is what the current edition looks like. His account of his conversion to Christ and his willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of truth and justice is, and I don't say this lightly, comparable in its beauty and power to Augustine's Confessions. And that is one meaning of the title, Witness. It is a witness to his faith in Jesus Christ and the transformation that resulted. 10 years after he did this, having rebuilt his life, he was a senior editor at Time magazine, and once again, he found himself having to walk away from everything that he had built for the sake of the truth, in order to tell the truth about what he had done as a Soviet spy. He wanted to rouse a lethargic and inattentive nation to a dire threat. This was at a time when most Americans viewed communism as wrong-headed and disreputable, something you didn't want to be involved in, but not seriously dangerous and certainly not totalitarian. The American media had deliberately concealed the mass murders and the genocide from the American public. The Soviet Union, which by that time had already murdered more civilians than the Holocaust, was portrayed as a peaceful democracy. Mao's movement in China was described as agrarian liberals. Chambers was critical in breaking through the wall of lies and forcing a public confrontation with the true nature of communism. And that's another meaning of the title, Witness. In order to live undercover, Chambers had to adopt the lifestyle of a respectable bourgeois and blend in with the world around him. But there was one thing he refused to compromise on. In order to blend in, he had to hire a black woman as a housekeeper because that was the prevailing practice in the neighborhood. But although it meant a risk of discovery, he refused to pay her the lower Negro wage that was the acceptable practice. And even more risky than that, he invited her to dine at the family dinner table with the family. As a communist, Chambers refused to have segregated dining in his home. He would later write, "By acting as a communist must, I acted as a Christian should." However, he soon discovered that most communists were not as scrupulous as he was. At first, he thought that by entering the underground, he would be escaping the petty factional squabbling, the recriminations, and the constant cycles of purges and recriminations that were ubiquitous in the open party. But he soon found out that the underground had its own forms of destructive stupidity. One extreme group among the communists held that it was morally wrong for a professional revolutionist to have children at all. They could only hamper or distract his work. That was one of the penalties of being a communist. I did not belong to that group, but in general, I shared their views. As an underground communist, I took it for granted that children were out of the question. Not only left-wing and underground communists took such matters for granted. Abortion was a commonplace of party life. There were communist doctors who rendered that service for a small fee. Communists who were more choosy knew liberal doctors who would provide it for a larger fee. Abortion, which now fills me with physical horror, I then regarded, like all communists, as a mere physical manipulation. One day in early 1933, my wife told me that she believed she had conceived. No man can hear from his wife, especially for the first time, that she is carrying his child without a physical jolt of joy and pride. I felt it. But so sunk were we in that life that it was only a passing joy and was succeeded by a merely momentary sadness that we would not have the child. We discussed the matter, and my wife said she must go at once for a physical check and to arrange for the abortion. When my wife came back, she was quiet and non-committal. The doctor had said there was a child. My wife went about preparing supper. "What else did she say?" I asked. "She said I'm in good physical shape to have the child." My wife went on working. Very slowly, the truth dawned on me. Do you mean, I asked, that you want to have the child? My wife came over to me, took my hands, and burst into tears. Dear heart, she said with a pleading voice, we couldn't do that awful thing to a little baby. Not to a little baby, dear heart. A wild joy swept over me. Reason, the agony of my family, the Communist Party and its theories, the wars and revolutions of the 20th century crumbled at the touch of the child. Both of us simply wanted a child. If the points on the long course of my break with communism could be retraced, that is probably one of them. Not at the level of conscious mind, but at the level of unconscious life. The child, even before her birth, had begun invisibly to lead us out of that darkness that we could not even realize toward that light, which we could not even see. As his daughter grew, Chambers used to love sitting there watching her in her high chair, smearing porridge on her face or meditatively dropping it on the floor. One day, he noticed her ear, how intricate and complex the human ear was, and the thought came burning into his mind, that could not have happened by accident. Only an immense design could have created that. The thought was unwanted and he shoved it aside, but it would return to haunt him.
Of course, the full 1 hour lecture is in the description, but I do want to talk about conversions. When it comes to a conversion, whenever it comes to a change of mind, I think all of us can at times oversimplify our journeys, right? Whether you're someone who experienced the first part of the journey where you go from Christianity to atheism, or you're someone who, like myself, has gone from Christianity to atheism, spent some years fooling around with that silliness, and then moved back over to Christianity. But it's never one thing. There's never just one domino, right? So in this experience with Whitaker Chambers, in the journey with Whitaker Chambers, there was a domino. We got to learn about one of the dominoes falling, where he looks at the design of his daughter's ear and believes, hey, this thing that I've been telling myself through materialism, that everything is an accident, that everything is by chance, that everything is just random chance over time, could not create something this beautiful. That may well be an emotional argument, but everything in politics is an emotional argument. Everything through the 2020 and 2021 era was emotional arguments. Emotional arguments resonate with us because we are emotional creatures. And one can say that they come to their conclusions through reason alone. I don't buy it. So, Christ is King. Every knee will bow. And next week I'm going to pop off, I think, 4 or 5 of these. I have 2 days off, so I think I'm going to put out 3 or 4 conversions, get us up to 30. I think we're in the 20s. But fascinating story. By the way, the story of Whitaker Chambers, watch the full 1 hour lecture at Acton Institute, because there's a lot of history there. There's a lot we see through media deception around Whitaker Chambers that, I don't know, I guess it just kind of helps prove the old adage that the more things change, the more they stay the same. So, nevertheless, Whitaker Chambers had a beautiful journey. I'm sure his book is awesome. I've not read it. I've just watched his full 1 hour lecture, and I thought it was awesome, so I wanted to share parts of it.